This is the final video in a series of videos that we are doing titled, Do All Religions Lead to God? Thus far, apart from the introductory video, we have done 4 other videos. And this particular video I would like to title as Responses to Pluralism and a Defense of Christian Exclusivism. This video is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is going to be an overview of what we have discussed thus far in the series. Section 2 is responses to the challenge of pluralism. And section 3 would be a defense of Christian exclusivism. So let's get started with section 1, which is a quick overview of what we have discussed thus far in all our videos. Video number 1 focused on the topic of the commonalities among religions. And what we focused in that video is to try and show that there are certain topics that are discussed by all religions. For example, every religion discusses the doctrine of God. Who is God? What is his nature? What is his number? Etc. And in video number 1, we discussed the fact that every religion discusses the doctrine of God. We also discussed the fact that every religion discusses the origins of the universe and the creation of human beings. And so every religion has cosmology or the doctrine of creation in it. Then we also discussed the fact that every religion has a doctrine of man or anthropology in it. Who is man? What is his nature? What is the meaning and purpose of life? And so on. We also discussed the fact that every religion has sociology to it, which means that every religion describes how society is to function. And then we discussed the fact that every religion recognizes that there is something wrong with human beings. We call it the doctrine of the human problem. And then we discussed that every religion has the doctrine of salvation to it. Depending on how you identify the human problem, you also prescribe a solution to that human problem. And from the Christian perspective, we could call it the doctrine of salvation. And then we discussed that every religion recognizes that death is not the end of human life. There is life after death. And then every religion explains what happens to human beings after death. And different religions have different views about end times and how everything is going to play out with human history and so on. And also every religion has a discussion of ethics. What is good? What is bad? What is right? What is wrong? And so on. So there are different topics that are common to every religion. This was the subject matter of video number 1. And in video number 1, we also discussed from the Christian perspective why these commonalities exist. I won't take the time to do that now. If you are interested in it, I would suggest that you go back to video number 1 of the series and listen to it. In video number 2, we focused on the differences among religions. Video number 1 was about the commonalities among religions. Video number 2 was about the differences among religions. And we tried to compare what Hinduism had to say, what Islam had to say, what Christianity had to say, and so on. For example, on the doctrine of God, especially on the number of God. And we found out that what these different religions say are very different from each other and sometimes mutually contradictory to each other. And then we came to discuss in video number 2 what different religions had to say about the human problem. Now, it is common to all religions for them to discuss the human problem, but what they have identified as the human problem is very, very different in different religions. And therefore, the solutions that they prescribe for these human problems are also very, very different. If ignorance is the human problem, then obviously enlightenment is the human salvation. If the load of bad deeds, karma, is the problem, then of course you have to find a way to get out of that karma. If sin is the human problem, then Jesus Christ and the solution that he provides is the ultimate solution for humanity. The point being that even though there are commonalities among religions, there are huge differences among religions as well. And we discussed the book by Mark Heim, which he's titled as Salvations, which means that different religions talk about different salvations, not the same kind of salvation. I think we can write similar books on gods or human problems or societies or mans, all trying to point out that different religions view these topics in different ways. Then in video number 3, we discussed Bible and other faiths. What does the Bible have to say about other religions, about other faiths? We pointed out the fact that the Bible was written before many of the world religions as we know it today came into existence, but the Bible does not allow the possibility of any other God other than the God of the Bible. From the very beginning, God has condemned the worship of any other God. And therefore, the religions surrounding these gods have also been condemned. And therefore, whether it is the Egyptian religion or whether they are the Canaanite religions or whether they were the Assyrian religions or whether they were the religions of the Babylonians, they were all condemned, and God called his people to serve him alone. In other words, according to the Bible, God alone is God, and every other God that makes claims to be gods are not gods at all. And if they are not gods at all, the religions surrounding them are not valid either. That was the conclusion of video number 3. And video number 4, we discussed the topic of uniqueness of Jesus. Why do Christians insist that salvation is found through Christ alone? Why do Christians insist on preaching the gospel? And we discussed at least 6 points regarding the uniqueness of Jesus. We said that he's unique because of the prophecies that have been made concerning him in the Old Testament. He's unique because of the kind of perspectives that he brings, because of the kind of teachings that he brings, because of the kind of morals that he brings, because of the claims that he made. We also discussed the fact that he is unique because of the kind of character that he demonstrated. We discussed the fact that his death was unique. The meaning and purpose of his death was unique. We discussed the fact that the resurrection of Jesus sets him apart from every other claimant to being God or prophet or anything else. And therefore, we came to the conclusion that Jesus is unique among all. And that was what we discussed in video number 4. Section 2 is going to focus on the responses to pluralism. We discussed in our introductory video that there is often a story that is told about 5 blind men who went to see an elephant. And different men have different opinions about what the elephant is. One touches his tail and says that the elephant is like a tail, like a rope, and so on. And so the pluralist tells us that these 5 blind men are like different religions, and the elephant represents truth or God, and that different religions have different understandings about truth or God, and therefore either all are equally true or all are equally false. Now, one response that we may want to make about this story is that there is one person who is claiming to be able to see everything as it is. And that person is the pluralist himself. Now, the pluralist claims that he is able to see the entire elephant, and that these 5 blind men were trying to understand the elephant and have come with wrong conclusions about what truth is or about what God is. Now, where does the pluralist get this perspective from? In fact, the pluralists accuse the exclusivists of being arrogant because they make claims about truth. But the pluralist is also making a claim about truth. The pluralist is saying that he alone knows the truth, and the other people, the other religions, do not have access to the truth. And therefore, while the pluralist accuses the exclusivist and the inclusivist of being arrogant, He himself is making a claim of arrogance, that he is able to see what is true and the other people are not being able to see what is true. Another image that is usually brought by the pluralists is that all roads lead to the same mountaintop. Now, for someone to be able to say that, he or she should have traveled each of these paths and have reached the mountaintop and then come to the conclusion that every one of these roads lead to the same mountaintop. And the question is whether the pluralist has done that. Has the pluralist studied every religion? Has the pluralist practiced every religion before coming to the conclusion that all religions lead to the same God or to the same salvation? And oftentimes the pluralist has not done that. Often there is this assumption that all roads are leading to the same God or that all roads lead to the same salvation. This is an assumption, an unverified assumption. Otherwise, the pluralist must have some kind of a bird's eye view of the whole mountain and all these roads, and he should have seen for himself that these roads lead to the same mountaintop. Again, the pluralist is claiming to have a perspective which the other people are not able to have because they are themselves traveling along one of these roads. What is to say that these different roads are not on different mountaintops? For example, Marx Heim's book on salvations is saying that we are not traveling towards the same salvation in different religion. We are not traveling towards the same God in different religions. So the first point that I want to make in section 2 is that the pluralist often assumes to have a perspective that the other people do not have, and therefore that is a claim of arrogance. Number 2, the pluralists often limit religion to ethics, especially the popular level pluralism that exists, which says, does not all religions teach you the same kind of things? Does not all religions teach you to do good and not to do bad? Does not all religions encourage you to be a better kind of person? In other words, they have reduced religion to ethics, and they have not recognized the fact that religion is not just ethics. Pluralism is often reductionist in the way it reduces religion to ethics. Religion is much more than ethics. Religion has the doctrine of God, the doctrine of man, the doctrine of society, the doctrine of the human problem, the doctrine of salvation. So many doctrines in religion. Religion is not just ethics. In fact, I would argue from a Christian perspective that religion is not even the mother of ethics, because atheists also have ethics. Those who do not belong to any religions or any religion, they also have ethics. Where do they get these ethics from? And so the second point that I want to speak about pluralism is that pluralism is often reductionistic in the sense that it reduces religion to ethics. Number 3, most popular level pluralists have not studied different religions. They have not examined different religions. When someone says that all religions are true, you might want to ask them, have you come to this conclusion after having studied all these religions? Or if somebody says all religions lead you to God, you might want to ask them, how did you come to that conclusion? What methodology did you adopt? Did you study every religion? Because most of these popular level pluralists have not studied religions, and therefore this is out of ignorance that they say that all religions lead to the same God or that all religions lead to salvation. In section 3, which I have titled In Defense of Christian Exclusivism, I'm trying to answer some of the charges that are brought against exclusivists in general and Christian exclusivists in particular. Christian exclusivism is often accused of being arrogant. The claim that we know what is true, others don't, is attached to arrogance. Therefore, there is the question of arrogance. Another thing that the Christian exclusivists are accused of is the point of exclusion. You try to exclude people away from you. That's a charge that is brought against it. Another charge that is brought against Christian exclusivism is the charge of imposition. Christians are trying to impose their religion on other people. And there is also the question of tolerance. By saying that your religion alone is true, or that Christ alone is the way of salvation, you are being intolerant of other people and intolerant of other religions. And therefore, in this section, I would like to answer these four charges from the biblical Christian perspective. But before I start doing that, may I say that most religions have exclusivism in them. Some of them are openly exclusivistic, and some of them have strands of exclusivism in it. Let me give you one example of exclusivism within a religion like Hinduism, which is mostly assumed to be a pluralistic kind of religion. The example that I want to bring to our attention is of the leader Dayananda Saraswati, the founder of the Arya Samaj, and he wrote a famous book called Satyartha Prakash, which means the light of truth. And in that book, he's trying to argue that Hinduism is actually the religion of the Vedas, and there is a lot of corruption that has come up within Hinduism, and all of that needs to be peeled apart, and that we need to go back to the religion of the Vedas. In fact, he is upset with Puranic Hinduism, or the Hinduism that has later developed over the centuries and millennia. He thinks that the only true Hinduism is the Hinduism of the Vedas. In fact, in his book, he has criticized every other form of Hinduism. He has criticized Buddhism, he has criticized Jainism, he has criticized Christianity, he has criticized Islam, and therefore a very exclusivistic kind of stream of thought within a pluralistic religion like Hinduism. My point being that there are exclusivists within every religion. Now let me get into each of the charges that we are talking about. May I argue that the Christian exclusivism is not arrogant. A Christian, when he shares or she shares his faith with someone else, he is sharing what he or she knows to be true. The Christian has experienced something in his or her life, and that experience is what he or she is sharing with someone else. In fact, there is a Christian thinker who has described Christian evangelism as one beggar telling another beggar where to find food. So the person has found food, he is satisfied with it, and therefore he shares this good news with other people. But if the other person says that I'm not a beggar, I don't need food, well, that person has the freedom to reject the offer of the Christian gospel. The point being that Christians are not claiming to be superior to other people. Christians are not trying to establish themselves as someone or people who know everything and others don't know anything. That's not the purpose of sharing the gospel at all. And therefore, it is one beggar telling another beggar where to find food. And therefore, it's not an arrogant kind of claim. The second charge that is brought against the Christian exclusivists is that there is an attempt to impose one's religion on the other. And may I say that in the Christian history, there have been instances where Christians have tried to impose their religion on others, and they have successfully done it in many ways. And many Christians of today are ashamed of the fact that in many places Christianity has spread in this way. But when today's Christian tries to preach the gospel or share Jesus with someone else, he's not trying to impose his religion on the other. Like I said before, it's like one beggar telling another beggar where to find food. And therefore it is just sharing what he or she knows to be true, or knows to be, has experienced to be true in one's experience, and therefore there is no effort to impose one's religion on the other. Christian exclusivism is also accused of being excluding other people. By the way, may I at this point say that the word exclusivism is not a word that exclusivists chose for themselves. It's unfortunate that we have to use that word to describe our position because it has been a word that has been imposed upon the Christian exclusivists, and given its popularity, one has to work within that framework. In fact, there are Christian scholars like Harold Netland who advise us that we should probably use a word like particularism to speak of our view about Christ and religions and so on. So Christian exclusivism is not an attempt to exclude people from our community or from the community of God. In fact, Christian gospel tries to include everyone without any differentiation of color or sex or caste or race. Christian gospel seeks to include people into its fold. And may I also at this point say that pluralistic societies can be very exclusivistic sometimes. For example, in the state that I came from a few hundred years ago, the lower caste people could not approach the higher caste people because their presence was considered to be polluting, and the pure people would not tolerate the presence of the impure people. The poorer castes or the lower castes could not access water or other things, public resources, that the higher caste had access to. My point being that a religiously pluralistic context can be very socially excluding, and that's often an idea that we do not pay attention to. Things have changed quite a bit. Casteism is not completely gone, but it has to a large extent been pushed back. My point being that Christian exclusivism does not seek to exclude, and often people who claim to be pluralists, religiously speaking, can become socially excluding as well. The final point about tolerance. Exclusivists are accused of being intolerant. Now, may I bring an idea? I think it comes to me from a book by D.A. Carson, where he differentiates between two ideas: tolerance of ideas and tolerance of people. These are two different things, he says, and we must have tolerance of people. People are to be respected. Their right to believe and follow and practice and propagate their religion is to be held high. And also, people are not to be discriminated against because they hold a different point of view, even religious point of view. They are not to be discriminated in society. They are not to be discriminated by the government. They are not to be discriminated by the law. There should not be any kind of partiality to someone because of his or her religion. There should not be a discrimination against someone because of his or her religion. This is tolerance of people. But the tolerance of ideas is a different thing. This is an unverified assumption that everything that every religion says is true or valid or equal. Now, that is intellectual suicide, because in no other field would we say that it does not matter what you believe, you are right, or it does not matter what you believe, you are valid. You know, your idea is valid. I think in the marketplace of ideas, we need to have ideas being discussed. So, when we say that Christians are not tolerant, or that exclusivists are not tolerant, or that exclusivism is intolerant by nature, I think we're making a mistake. It is a tolerance of people that we need to have, not the tolerance of ideas. Ideas need to be contested. They need to be debated. They need to be discussed in the marketplace of ideas. So with this, I conclude my series on the question, do all religions lead to God? And in this video, I have attempted to do three things. One is discuss an overview of the videos that we have made thus far. Number two, I tried to provide certain responses to the challenges of pluralism. And also in section 3, I tried to defend Christian exclusivism against some of the charges that are brought against it. I hope this is a blessing to you. Thank you.